From our friends over at the World Socialist website, U.S. corporate profits hit a new record. Isn't that wonderful? JB had that weed movie idea on point. Yes, he did.
Dude, I'll be on it. Let's get it done. I'm down.
And Reeves got the idea for the weed resort, and I'm down for that. We need to invest in that.
Yep. Yes, sir.
So just to show how
this is from Shannon Jones, right?
Yeah, just to show how ridiculous things are out there. And again, you can see it's a much longer article in WSWS from December 1st. Definitely go check that out. Give them a follow. Again, very simply, U.S. corporations enjoyed the widest profit margins in more than 70 years during the second and third quarters of 2021. Now, this is not like pandemic induced when the government is kicking in $6 trillion thanks to the CARES Act. This is the result of the kind of the aftermath of the CARES Act. This is wow. Widest profit margins in more than 70 years. But yet wages are relatively stagnant. They're not really doing much for anybody.
And unemployment through the roof,
Well, unemployment, I think, is actually low as a percentage, but there's tons of people out of the workforce.
Documented. Yep.
Right. The average wage isn't a living wage. So
there's a worker shortage and all that stuff apparently, except no one has a job.
Right. Yeah. So fueled in large part by the government's mass injection of cash into the economy. Well, there was the child tax credit. There was the $1,400. Thanks for the $2,000, Joe Biden. There was the welcome Tara Reid. I just got a notification on Twitter. Hi, Tara. So there was the $1,400. There was the child tax credit. So they have been pumping some cash into the economy this year. Okay, so you can see the non-financial profits increased $67.5 billion in the third quarter. Again, profits are up 39.6%. in just the second and third quarters of this year. In dollar terms, the annual increase in profits since before the start of the pandemic has been over $500 billion. It's just stunning, the kind of numbers that we're talking about here. And it's all on the back of the American people and with our hard work and sweat. And we're not getting the raises and we're not getting the bonuses and we're not getting, it's all going upwards, unfortunately. So again, profit margins are at their highest level since 1950. Nearly 2/3 of publicly traded U.S. corporations have reported higher profit margins this year compared to last. And 100 of the largest have booked profit margins at least 50% above last year's level. I mean, this is, again, using inflation. And I think I published something earlier this week in leftist.today, how corporations are using inflation. It was the guy from Dollar General. Maybe that was even last week, as an excuse to raise prices.
Yeah.
But really what they're doing is they're increasing their profits because they realize that they can use that as an excuse and people will accept higher prices as a result. And all they're doing is bumping up their profit. So P&G, supplier of home personal care products, reported 24.7% profit margin for the third quarter, $14.3 billion in net earnings. In April, they announced major price increases for its line of products. Rather than give a price break to consumers, they decided to reward investors by giving back some $3 billion of its own, by buying back $3 billion of its own stock.
Right, which is what all the companies have been doing, right?
Well, because they can. That further inflates the price because it reduces the number of shares that are available on the market, and it eats up some of the corporate profit that could potentially be shared either with shareholders or with employees, like it should be.
Yeah.
Okay. And as a result, also among the big winners were oil companies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whose profits rebounded from last year's slump amidst rising petroleum prices. ExxonMobil had a net income of $6.8 billion in the third quarter of 2021, while Chevron reported adjusted $5.7 billion. They were a little bit off, but of course that's greater than expected result, and it's their best result in 8 years. Thanks, Steve. I'm sure Steve Donziger thanks you. Free Steve Donziger. And 17 times greater than earnings a year ago.
Jesus Christ.
The greatest polluters on the planet. And look at what's happened.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Remember they were putting lead in our air for years.
Right. Now, on top of that, you've got the UAW, which imposed a rotten contract, falling far short of workers' demands, shutting down the strike by 10,000 fewer workers. UAW was paying only $250 a week strike pay. They used threats and lies to get it ratified. They falsely claimed the company didn't have the money to provide adequate wage increases, including the restoration of decades of concessions.
Yep.
Except,
essentially, they gave them the go ahead.
Here's the thing. This was despite the fact that the company reported net income of $6 billion for the fiscal year ending October 31st. So how do they not have the money? More than double the previous year's total of $2.8 billion. And that's not $6.8 billion of
right.
I don't know if that's profit. I mean, it says net income.
Yeah.
But I believe income is basically
previous year's total.
After,
well, it's like if it's $2.8 billion, right? They made $6 billion. You're talking about $3 billion profit on top of what they made last year, right? So therefore, they should have at least another $1.5 billion that they should be able to just give to their worker. You know,
at least they should be able to pass on, and not to their CEO. And that's part of the problem. Also, is the discrepancy from CEO pay, of course, to the average worker salary. Okay. So also we're looking at Kellogg, which is threatening to hire permanent scabs to replace. Now, I believe they actually are in the process of settling that. And again, they're trying to jam through a two-tier wage system still. Okay, management has refused to meet workers' demands for the elimination of the hated multi-tier wage structure that leaves 30% of the workforce at a transitional level, as well as the 7-day and 16-hour work schedule. That's always great. 84-hour work week. Or that's actually more than that. But it's not. They're not 16 hours a day, 7 days on. But it's either up to 16-hour work days, or they can work for an entire week. In which case, 1 or 2 of those days is a 16-hour day. I believe they are 84-hour work shift, which is just crazy. Right? So again, the bumper profits for U.S. corporations amid the worst health catastrophe in 100 years is due to the policies of a criminal ruling class that at every point has prioritized profits over human lives. Right? There's no level of death that'll make the government change course because policy is entirely subordinated to the profit interest of the wealthy. Now, I will say that this article then gets very alarmist and talks a lot about COVID and our response to COVID, and WSWS has been, I don't want to use the word alarmist, but they have been the most conservative in what we should be doing, and they want to be the most aggressive in elimination of the disease, or of the virus. They think that it can be eradicated, and they are pushing very hard for that.
Well, you better get hip to indie left, indie left, indie left.news.